The C12C from ThermalRight comes in black or white, plus there are aRGB versions as well. But is the C12C a good case fan? Spoiler alert, it's not. What's up everyone, Eric here and welcome to Hardware for Gamers. For those of you who are new to the channel, I test and review PC cases, CPU coolers, PC case fans, and video cards. Before I get into this overview, to have full disclosure, this fan was sent over to me to test and review, but all opinions expressed in this video are mine and mine alone. So if you do end up liking this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you really like the video, how about subscribing to the channel? I wanted to start off this overview by saying that the C12C is not the same as the C12. The blade design of these fans are completely different, so they are completely different fans. I understand the name doesn't really suggest that they're different, but they are different. Just something to understand when looking at this or these fans. The fan I tested is the ThermalRight TLC12CW-S PWM. It has a max rated RPM of 1550. It has 9 blades. It has a fluid dynamic bearing. It is PWM, so it has a 4-pin fan connector. The aRGB connector is the 3-pin 50/50 connector, and it has a price tag of around $7 US. Now, before getting onto the results of my testing, I did check some of these numbers with the TLC12C PWM that I got with the Burst Assassin 120, and I got pretty much the same numbers as I did with the C12CWS, so I'm pretty confident in what I've got for my results, and we'll get into that as we go through the charts. Okay, starting with the PWM range. At 100% PWM, this fan had an RPM of 1750-ish, which is a fair bit higher than the max rated 1550 that they say the RPM should be. Then at 0% PWM, the RPM was at 310-ish, which actually gives this fan a pretty good RPM range. Moving on to the aRGB LEDs, the colors look good, and the brightness seems pretty adequate for a medium lit room. Other than that, I'm really not sure what else to say. Okay, before I get to the standardized testing, if you appreciate all the testing I've done, can you please support the channel by using my Amazon Associates link that is in the description. All you need to do is click on the link that suits your location and then add an item or items to your cart and order them, and the channel will get a small kickback at no added cost to you. Plus, if you have any questions on how I test the fans, please watch my fan testing methodology video. There'll be a card along the top, and I will also have it linked in the description. But please note, I have updated the cooler that I use for the CPU cooling performance test to the Frost Commander 140. This way I can have 140 and 120 millimeter fans using the same cooler, so everything's a little bit more apples to apples. Starting with the dBA and RPM, at 4 volts, the C12CWS PWM had a dBA of 32 and an RPM of 758. At 6 volts, the sound level went up to 32.2 dBA with an RPM of 1075. At 8 volts, the dBA went up to 33.7 with an RPM of 1330. Then at 10 volts, the sound level went up to 36.3 dBA and the RPM went up to 1555. And finally at 12 volts, the dBA was 39 and that gave the fan an RPM of 1740. Okay, the sound recording at each of these voltages, but first the ambient room noise for your reference. Next, the airflow testing. I left the dBA numbers up on the chart for your reference. At 4 volts with no obstructions, it had an FPM of 55. With the mesh panel, it had an FPM of 12. And with the covered panel, it had an FPM of 0. jumping up to 12 volts. With no obstructions, it had an FPM of 290. With the meshed panel, it had an FPM of 280. And with the covered panel, it had an FPM of only 25. Moving on to the CPU cooling performance. At 4 volts, the steady state CPU temperature was 82.3 C. At 6 volts, it was 78.5 C. At 8 volts, it was 75.2 C. At 10 volts, it was 73.6 C. And at 12 volts, it was 73 C. Okay, I will be comparing the ThermalRight TL C12CW PWM, which sells for around $8 to the Arctic F12 PWM PST, which sells for $10, the Arctic P12 PWM PST, which again sells for $10, and the Deepcool CF120 aRGB, which sells for $45 in a 3-pack. So when comparing the C12C to these other fans, with everything being voltage equalized, it is the loudest fan at each voltage. And as I switch over to the airflow charts, while having the lowest FPM of these fans when there are no obstructions, then in the mesh panel testing, again, it has the lowest FPM of all these fans. And in the covered panel testing, there is a large FPM drop across all the fans. But this chart still speaks volumes, with the C12C pretty much flattening out at 0 FPM after 12 volts, which is not good. Moving on to the CPU cooling performance. And this is where things do a complete 180, because the C12C does quite well when compared to these other fans. Not really understanding how or why, but the C12C seems to work well as a CPU cooler fan. And that brings us to the 34 dBA testing. Having all the fans noise equalized to 34 dBA or 12 volts if they don't get up to 34 dBA. With no obstructions, the C12CWS performs pretty poorly with an FPM of 220. With the meshed panel, it again performs not well with an FPM of 115. Then with the covered panel, it didn't perform at all with an FPM of 0. So what do I think of the ThermalRight C12C? It's an okay to pretty good fan for a CPU cooler, and it stops there. Not really much else to say on what it's good on. Now the C12C is priced really low right now. I think you can actually get a 3-pack for like 15 USD. But even at that price, the C12C is a really, really bad buy to buy for or as case fans. And that's the reason I'm making this video, is to warn people not to use the C12Cs as case fans or system fans. If you're looking to replace the fans on your radiator or air cooler, the C12C would be good or fine. Like, it will work pretty well as a CPU cooler fan. But based off my testing, they should not be used as case or system fans. Now, for someone who may have already bought the C12Cs and is trying to use them as case fans, they'll work well enough behind a meshed panel. They're not ideal, but they should work well enough. But if you have them behind a covered panel, you'll likely want to get new fans because they ain't doing anything based off my testing. You may want to check out or try to find some C12s if you can still find them. I think that'll be kind of hard. You might be able to find some C12015, so they are the slim C12s. Those are actually pretty good based off my testing. They actually perform pretty well, and they do come in an aRGB version in both white and black, so you should be able to get something that matches. Again, though, stock seems to be kind of scattered. Finding things seems to be a little off, but they are pretty good fans. But yeah, the C12Cs seem to be suited or best suited as a CPU cooling fan, which is likely why ThermalRight pairs them with their CPU coolers, or their air coolers anyways. I wish I knew why the C12C does well as a CPU cooling fan, but does so badly as a case fan. The issue is I just don't have the equipment to figure something like that out. Maybe GN or Gamers Nexus can actually figure something like that out, or will be able to figure something like that out soon enough. But yeah, I can't do that with the testing setup that I have right now. But yeah, I guess that's all I have for this one. So if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're still watching and you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified whenever I drop a new video. There is also the HFT Discord server. It is completely free to join. All you need to do is agree to the server rules, and then you get to see all of my charts. A link is in the description. There is also Patreon if you'd like to support the channel directly. Again, a link is in the description. You may want to check out the link right here. It's likely going to be a link to my case fan reviews. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.